Hey, what's up YouTube? Garatha here. So over the last few days, I've been asked quite a few questions about my new character, the SABOW. Now it sounds like a bit of a meme, honestly, but the character has been very solid. So if you guys aren't aware, I did a fresh start, hardcore SSF, like a restart, and this is the character I've been playing as my first character. The progression has been super smooth. I've done Quest Exarch, I did Quest Eater, all relatively easily, honestly. I haven't really struggled at all. I'll show you guys some footage of that throughout the video. But yeah, let's get into it. What is the core idea around this character? So we're using Scourge Arrow to trigger multiple Manaforge setups. Why Scourge Arrow? I guess I should take this time to explain how Manaforge works. So Manaforge triggers when you spend 300% of the Manaforge setup's cost. So for example, let's say Frenzy and Burning Arrow here cost 10 mana. If I reduce that by 7, it'll cost 3 mana. 300% of that is 9 mana cost. So we'd have to spend 9 mana to trigger this setup. Now, Manaforge has a cooldown baseline of 0.5 seconds, which is important because CDR reduces the cooldown quite a bit. The reason why we're using Scourge Arrow is because we can put minus mana on both rings and even the amulet and make the mana cost 0 cost even if we wanted. And then Scourge Arrow would still cost a lot of mana because it's a channel skill and it'd be triggering it on cooldown. And we're taking this a step further by scaling the character with more CDR. This is the main reason behind Saboteur. Increase cooldown recovery rate from like clockwork. That's the core reason and the core build idea. The more CDR you have with this character, the better. There's no breakpoint like with cast and crit. The more CDR, the more damage you do. Currently, this is giving me about 15% more damage. I don't have any cooldown recovery on my gear yet. You can get a couple of items with CDR. For example, the Crucible Tree has 20% CDR on it. I don't have that yet. The belt can have CDR on it. The boots can have CDR. You can have Shaper boots. You can have Implicit on the boots from I think it's Eater. I don't have that yet either. There's quite a few ways to get CDR. I just don't really have any of them other than the fact that I'm a SABOW. The other reason I'm playing a SABOW and let's say not a Deadeye, the main reason for that is because of Born in Shadows. The Born in Shadows is one of the best defensive Ascensi nodes on the entire tree in terms of like a 1-pointer. This gives you Blind Aura, which scales really well with evasion, and it also gives you 15% damage reduction from enemies that are blinded. This node is very strong. Like defensively, this character actually feels quite good. If I was playing a Deadeye, I would probably be dead already, to say the least. And the other node is Explosive Expert. So we're going crit on this character. It's a lot easier to crit on this side of the tree than like, let's say a Champion. Like Champion starts in kind of a weird spot to go crit. But Shadow's in the perfect spot to go crit. We have Assassination. We're really close to the bow crit nodes. Eventually we could use Lionized Fall, for example, if we wanted to. A lot of options there, and crit is just the best way to scale this character. This node gives us about 25% more damage right now, which is very solid for a 1-pointer. The last node is unfortunately the worst part about the character. I'm currently using Bomb Specialist. I'll talk about some of the other options later, but it's honestly not that impactful. It's just a whatever last point. There's some options we can go for later. I don't really have the setup for that. I'll talk about it in a second. But yeah, that's the core idea around the character. Now, people might be wondering why we're using Manaforge with no mana cost. It's kind of not intuitive because Manaforge actually gives you damage per mana cost. I just think the CDR scaling will be more effective than scaling the mana costs because it's very hard to trigger it on cooldown if you have like a high mana cost Manaforge setup. The only way you can really do this probably is by using Endagon. I don't really know how that would look. I don't have an Endagon. This is a fresh start character. This could be an idea for later. But yeah, you'd have to like trigger with a really high mana cost ability and you probably wouldn't be using Scourge Arrow anymore. That's like a completely different build. This is why we're using Scourge Arrow, and this is how the build is set up currently. How are we scaling defensively? So I'm running a Lightning Coil currently with Purity of Elements. Before I got Lightning Coil, I was using Determination. I had about 7,000 armor, which is not enough to run Molten Shell, so honestly, it's not really worth going armor, in my opinion, unless you can get like at least 15 to 20,000 armor. I just think Fizzing his Ellie is the best way to scale this character for Fizz damage hits. Now for Ellie hits, we have Spell Suppression for spells and Evasion for attacks. Unfortunately, the biggest downside of this type of character is the Ellie attacks. That's probably the thing that would most likely one-shot you on this type of character, but Evasion does help quite a bit with that, and mapping, while mapping, you generally don't take that much damage, and we do have Born in Shadows for some DR there. This character is actually quite strong defensively. I've been surprised. I haven't really felt like I've been in danger. So what's next on the character? A couple things I want to go for. Like I said before, CDR is very important, so I want to get CDR on everything I can get it on, like the belt, the boots, the Crucible weapon. All that's really good. I also want to get additional arrows on my bow and my quiver. I actually lucked out and got a really insane quiver already, which is pretty insane considering this is a fresh start character, and I already have a crazy good quiver. My quiver is honestly pretty much done, unless I want to double corrupt it. But this is like pretty much what you're looking for. You're looking for additional arrow with like crit multi, prod speed, because you have the prod mastery, damage with bow skills. All that stuff's really good. Additional arrows is really, really insane with this character, and yeah, it feels really good with Scourge Arrow. I'm thinking I'm going for the Scourge Arrow helmet enchant too, probably. I don't really look at the enchants too much, but I think the Scourge Arrow enchant is the best by far, the additional pod. This is very impactful, and I think it'll make the damage quite a bit higher. Scourge Arrow is still a significant part of our damage. It's actually the majority of our damage still. Talk about the Manaforge setups that we have currently. So I'm using Frenzy with Explosive Arrow and Burning Arrow currently, and we have Inspiration linked for reduced mana cost as well on top of that. Same with Lightning Arrow, except we have Lightning Arrow linked with Power Charge and Crit. This is how we're getting Power Charges. Very solid. And we also shock quite a bit with Lightning Arrow, because Lightning Arrow has the increased shock effect thing on it. And I have Storm Rain with Ice Shot. Ice Shot doesn't do that much damage, but the chill is pretty nice, and Storm Rain does a lot of single target damage. It's very noticeable. Storm Rain is the only non-projectile we're using, because it's like the highest single target in my opinion. We're scaling mostly projectiles because we're using Vengeance Cascade. I got that before level 90 on a fresh start. Basically, you get the Blight nodes with Distilled Fungus and Blight Swan. That is how you get the Anointed Joy to drop, and then you can use Ol Extractors to get the Gold relatively easily. Yeah, it's kind of how I set the character up. I'm not really going to talk about the tree too much. It's a very generic bow character tree, except we're in Shadow because we're a Shadow, and we have like Assassination. I did path out this side here to save points, and it's very similar tree to the Champion actually, the Linear Champion build I made earlier. Honestly, the leveling's pretty similar. I leveled with LE hit, but I would recommend displaying Lightning Arrow leveling and switch to Scourge Arrow when you have minus mana crafts. That's probably the best way to go about this. The minus mana kind of enables the Scourge Arrow with the Manaforge setups. Before then, you don't have enough mana to trigger. It will be kind of awkward. But you can do like Lightning Arrow and also have Manaforge setups as well. That'd be pretty solid. So how are we scaling this build in the future? Like I said before, I don't really like Bomb Specialists. This node is a little bit weak. It doesn't do nothing, but it's just a little feels bad because it doesn't do that much. Now, I guess I should explain why we're not using trigger bots. People have been asking me this question. We're not using trigger bots because it only works with triggered spells, and Manaforge is triggered attacks. What this means is it doesn't work with the Manaforge basically, but we could also use it with Light Poacher, for example. Like all these unique items that have like trigger abilities, these all count as spells. Like trigger level 20 Spirit Burst, this counts as a spell. Like Choir of the Storm, trigger level 30 Lightning Bolt, this counts as a spell. So we could use these type of items with our character. Even like Fire Burst, for example. Fire Burst is a weird one. It's going to be kind of hard to do on SSF, but you could potentially get a Fractured Bow with Fire Burst on it. And that would be insane, kind of. Like you'd use gems like LA Focus, like Energy Leech, basically generic damage gems that increase both the Fire Burst damage and the bow damage. That would be pretty cool, and you'd use it with trigger bots, so trigger twice. Now, we're kind of getting into like some super theorycraft things I probably won't be able to do in SSF, but this is definitely a way you can take this character. The way I'm probably going to end up going is maybe trying out the Demolition Specialist. This is a bit weird. You might be wondering why using mines on a bow character. I'll show you real quick in PUB how it looks with the mine setup. This is basically for the aura when they land. Now, if I enable Demolition Specialist with Pyroclast Mine, for example, our damage will go up quite a bit. Here, let me like set this up real quick. Let's enable it. As you see, the PoE DPS doubles. Now, I don't have the mana currently, that's why these warnings are showing up, but you'd probably just take off Precision, for example, and like you have enough mana. But yeah, as you can see, the damage pretty much doubles from the mine node. If you take the node off, quite a bit of damage loss. This is a 40% more multiplier currently. The reason why I haven't decided to do this yet is because you have to throw mines, and you probably have to use Minefield. And you're already kind of gem starved because you have 3 different Manaforge setups. So I'm not sure if I'm going to go this way, but this is probably the biggest single target you can go for is the mine setup. What's next on the tree? So I'm not using Ghost Dance currently because I have no ES, but we could potentially go for like maybe Glorious Vanity with the Pain Entombment node and get a bunch of ES from that and then run Ghost Dance. This could be an option defensively, or just try to get like a really high ES Evasion Helmet and run Ghost Dance that way. Basically, Ghost Dance is really good defensively, so I kind of want to make use of it and get some ES somewhere. That would be some way to go for the defenses later on. Also, I mentioned earlier we're running a Lightning Coil with Purity of Elements. Eventually, you could probably get enough res on the tree and on the gear to drop Purity of Elements and maybe run Determination. Or another damage aura, that could be a way to go. Yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. I hope you guys enjoy this type of content. I'll continue to update this character if I don't die. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.